The interim side is more about mentality. It's about getting the job done. Most people are only referred to, you're only as good as your last role. And technically that's true. But for a lot of people, it's not the way of working. It's almost like a psychological piece is their security. Where more often than not, you undertake a 9-month interim role, although you're still on notice, it's for 9 months. You could be in a senior finance role and you could be on a 4-week or 12-week notice. So actually your tenure in that role could be far less. And how many individuals join a company now for a career point of view? How many join for the job? And I think that's the balance that we see. So being an interim is about the mentality to act in that way. It's not about the qualifications.
So it's different mindset.
It's mindset.
I think the situation Ashley describes actually comes back to the qualification issue, because if you look at a lot of professional US candidates, they will leave after their first degree, take a role for 3 or 4 years, but always intending to go back and do their MBA, and then they come out again and do another. So their career is sort of broken after the 3 or 4 year point anyway, and that sets a pattern that says, you know, my career is going to come in chunks like that: 3 or 4 years at this role, a year or two doing my masters, then my first big role, and then, you know, it sort of moves on from that. I think that culture is spreading.
Now, probably the word interim is overused. We can have an interim government, we can have an interim football manager, and actually most of those individuals are in position because they want it full term. Whereas a true interim only wants to make sure they maintain it for the next incumbent, and that's going to be so it's a mentality shift. And you'd be surprised how many top 100 positions at board level and then the next level down, that C-suite, are actually covered by interims.
Whether it's in the finance function or whether it's in our sort of delivery resource pool, we use interim staff, you know, quite extensively. And I don't think that it has the perception nowadays that it used to have. In the you know, 10 years ago, perhaps it carried a little bit of taintedness. But nowadays, these individuals, they're valued. They make a valued contribution, and they're very much seen as part of the team, whether they're a long-term interim or whether they come in as a specific sort of, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to change, and they kind of go in, they do it, and then they kind of close the door behind them. Either way, I think there's a greater acceptance to those sort of individuals nowadays than there was.
Stigma, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. There is a cost to a business, but there's also got to be a benefit associated. And so I mentioned the example of maternity cover. In some situations, it could be because someone's required to be a mentor, because there's 2 or 3 individuals that have either just qualified or about to, that they want to be mentored into their new roles. It could be because there's a technology change, so perhaps they're changing their ERP, correct? And it may be if the individual's got that knowledge, they can help us to integrate or to train. So they're trying to, there's a cost of the cover, but what can we turn that into a benefit? What's the angle? What's the issue? And interestingly, the conversation you have with the hiring manager for that interim is such as, does the individual understand why the hire is being made? You think about it in perhaps other industries, you'd call it locums. They'd go in, be it in doctor, surgery, so on. And that's that mentality shift. Suddenly ask the question in that meeting, find out what it could be. And some clients will, well, what would be the benefit? Because we know we're doing the cover. Ask, find out. Because sometimes it could be something completely unassociated. And more recently there was a situation where a business was looking to go online with their offering, but the individual that they were looking at had that experience previously, but they hadn't really thought about bringing that extra knowledge into the business.
One of the areas I can see that need growing as well is as firms are trying harder and harder to increase the diversity of their senior team, you know, the pressure to have a better balance of male and female directors and other diversity challenges. You know, those candidates take time to find. You can't just go into the market and you know, put a shortlist together in 4 weeks. Combined with the issue of long notice periods, you know, organisations are going to need to have people who can cover those roles in a professional way for 6-12 months to allow that search to be done well and to get the right candidate, rather than have to compromise just to get somebody in quickly. So, you know, that's definitely a pressure in the market as well.
So I guess is there really such thing as a permanent job? And if so, when you make the hire, you have to ask that question. If you look at the Olympics, for example, how long do you really need someone to be involved? Because having a good understanding of the situation they have, after the Olympics and the Paralympics, there's probably about 3 or 4 months left. And once that's completed, that there's no longer a need for that person in that role. So that would be a really good example of where perhaps the methodology and the thought process of every job must be a permanent job falls out the window. And I will often laugh if I hear anybody in our organisation in the main talking about requiring somebody as a project manager for a permanent basis. Because unless the client has got a string of projects they genuinely require, it probably means there's a definition of time, hence the word project. So we will always ask questions, and I think, again, it's the evolution of the thought process. But I don't think that anybody who is a very strong project manager would ever say to you, they're not good at their job and they haven't got a career. It's just they always know what project they're on, but they don't know what the next one is. And that's the only difference.